Okay, so you want to own an Edo tea house. Picture the scene in 1775. It is midnight in the Yoshiwara, the famed night district of Edo, modern-day Tokyo. Glowing paper lanterns cast soft light over polished cedar floors. Sliding paper screens muffle the gentle plucking of shamisen strings. The air smells of incense, roasted tea, and warm rice wine. Outside, cherry blossoms drift across the cobblestones. Inside, you sit surrounded by silk kimonos, serving the most powerful men in Japan. It looks like the ultimate luxury business. One number ruins the fantasy. In the autumn of 1775, a single evening's entertainment for an elite patron at an exclusive Edo tea house could easily run up a bill of 50 gold ryo. 50 ryo was an astonishing sum. That single night's tab was equivalent to roughly 600 days of manual labor for a master Edo carpenter, nearly 2 full years of hard earnings. Yet, as the sun rose the next morning, the tea house owner would not hold a single gold coin from that bill. Not a single copper mon changed hands at the door. The patron simply walked out into the morning mist with a bow and a smile. Let's unroll the surviving registers of 18th century Japan and rebuild the true ledger, line by line, to reveal how an elite tea house actually made and lost its fortune. Because the tea was never the business. The credit trap was. To understand how this worked, you first have to dismantle everything you think you know about a Japanese tea house. The average person hears tea house and imagines a small shop selling green tea and sweet rice cakes. Or perhaps they imagine a brothel. In 18th century Edo, an elite establishment known as an ageya was neither. The Tokugawa shogunate had forced all legal adult entertainment into a single, moated, walled district on the northern edge of the city, the Yoshiwara. Inside these gates stood 2 completely different types of businesses. On one side were the brothels, known as oriya. They housed the courtesans. On the other side were the ageya, the licensed tea houses. An ageya owned no courtesans. It employed no dancers. It cooked no high-end meals. Instead, the tea house was an exclusive luxury salon and event broker. If a wealthy merchant or high-ranking samurai wanted to spend an evening in the upper echelons of the Yoshiwara, he could not simply walk up to a top-tier courtesan's door. He was legally and socially forbidden from doing so. He had to book through a tea house. The tea house owner was the ultimate gatekeeper. You provided the private room, you hired the elite caterers from the city, you ordered the high-grade sake shipped from Osaka, you summoned the musicians, the geisha, and the male jesters known as taikomochi. Most importantly, you dispatched a formal messenger to the brothel house to negotiate the attendance of a tayu or an oiran, the highest-ranking courtesans of the realm. We know this because of a remarkable surviving historical document, the Yoshiwara Saiko. Published semi-annually throughout the Edo period, the Yoshiwara Saiko was the official printed directory and register of the licensed district. It listed every registered tea house, every brothel, and every courtesan by rank along with their official fees. If your tea house was not listed in the Yoshiwara Saiko, you did not exist. You were an illegal establishment, subject to immediate raid and asset seizure by the shogunate's municipal police, the Machibugyo. Page through a copy of the 1775 Yoshiwara Saiko, and you will find the elite ageya listed at the very top of the district hierarchy. They were the crown jewels of Edo's night economy. So if these tea houses catered to the richest men in the largest city on earth, why was owning one an economic tightrope walk? The answer lies in a cultural rule that doubled as a financial trap: kakeuri. Kakeuri means selling on credit. In the refined world of the upper Yoshiwara, pulling out a purse of coins to pay for a night of music and dining was considered terribly crude. Real gentlemen did not handle money in polite company. Cash was taboo. Everything went on the tab. When a patron ordered a 5-course meal of fresh red sea bream, the tea house paid the caterer. When the patron poured cups of aged sake for his entourage, the tea house paid the sake merchant. When the high-ranking courtesan arrived in her heavy brocade robes, the tea house paid her brothel houser official booking fee up front. The tea house owner fronted every single copper coin of operating capital out of his own pocket. The patron signed a receipt or simply gave his word and walked away. All these individual tabs were compiled into a master ledger called a kakecho. This brings us to the core financial mechanism of the entire trade. The Teahouse was not operating a retail business. It was operating a short-term merchant bank that issued uncollateralized, interest-free luxury loans to men who were frequently broke. So when did the Teahouse owner actually get paid? Only twice a year. By strict Edo custom, tab accounts were settled on two specific festive settlement days: Obon, the midsummer festival in the 7th lunar month, and Omisoka, New Year's Eve on the last day of the 12th month. For 6 months at a time, your Teahouse bled cash. You paid your staff, you paid your rent, you paid your suppliers, all while holding nothing but paper promises bound in ink. Think about the pressure built into that calendar. For 364 days, you carried the entire financial risk of Edo high society on your balance sheet. If your patrons paid in full on New Year's Eve, you were rich. If they didn't, you were ruined. To understand why those patrons so often failed to pay, you have to look at the bizarre socioeconomic contradiction of feudal Japan. The Tokugawa shogunate recognized 4 rigid social classes: samurai at the top, followed by farmers, artisans, and merchants at the very bottom. By law, samurai held all political power. Merchants were legally viewed as unproductive parasites. By economic reality, the system was completely inverted. The long peace of the Tokugawa era meant samurai no longer fought wars. They lived on fixed annual rice stipends called koku. As the commercial economy of Edo boomed, the price of rice steadily fell relative to manufactured goods and urban luxuries. The samurai were getting poorer every decade. The merchants, meanwhile, were sitting on mountains of gold and silver. Inside the walls of the Yoshiwara, the shogunate's strict social hierarchy dissolved. Money was the only rank that mattered. A samurai could not wear his long swords inside a tea house. He had to leave his weapons at the district gate. Many samurai even wore deep woven straw hats called kamuso to hide their faces, embarrassed to be seen spending their dwindling stipends alongside wealthy townsmen. Yet the social competition inside the tea house was fierce. It was driven by the concept of tsu, a word meaning cultural sophistication, panache, and mastery of pleasure house etiquette. A true tsu never asked the price of anything. He tipped lavishly. He hired extra musicians for his rivals' rooms. He ordered the most expensive seasonal delicacies. Samurai ran up astronomical tea house tabs simply to prove that their noble bloodlines were not economically obsolete. Rich merchants ran up massive tabs to prove they could outspend the aristocracy. The tea house owner sat in the middle, quietly scribbling figures into his ledger, watching 2 desperate groups of men compete to see who could bankrupt themselves faster. That sounds like a great position for the owner. It wasn't. Because when a samurai ran up a debt he couldn't pay, the tea house owner faced a legal nightmare. Under Tokugawa law, a merchant could not easily sue a samurai in court for personal consumer debt. Samurai enjoyed legal protections, and dragooning a noble family into court over an unpaid party bill in the Yoshiwara was a quick way to have your tea house license revoked by municipal authorities for causing public dishonor. The tea house owner had no physical collateral. He had no legal enforcement arm. He had only social leverage. Let's break down the actual daily operating costs of running one of these establishments, as drawn from municipal tax records and district police licenses. First was your location. An ageya required a massive footprint in the prime central avenues of the Yoshiwara, such as Nakanosho. Real estate inside the moated walls was strictly limited. Rent was exorbitant. Second was structural maintenance. Edo was a city made of paper and wood, plagued by catastrophic fires known poetically as the Flowers of Edo. The Yoshiwara burned to the ground more than 20 times during the Edo period. Every tea house owner had to maintain a private fire prevention fund and keep emergency reconstruction timbers stored in yards outside the city limits. Third was the staffing and entertainment overhead. You needed a head clerk, banto, who understood accounting and could judge a patron's creditworthiness in seconds. You needed house servants, kitchen runners, and guards. Then came the variable costs for every single party. A top-ranking Oiran courtesan did not travel alone. She arrived with a procession of younger attendants, apprentice courtesans, shinzo, and bodyguards. The teahouse owner paid for all of them. You paid the caterers for multi-course meals served on exquisite lacquerware. You paid for expensive wax candles, high-grade incense, and imported sake. By the time a patron sat down on your tatami mats, you had already committed 20 to 30 ryo of your own capital to make that single room function for 5 hours. Now imagine what happens when the dominoes fall. Here is the primary chain reaction that haunted every teahouse owner in Edo. It starts in the countryside. A cold summer or heavy rain causes a poor rice harvest in northern Japan. The price of rice spikes dramatically in the markets of Edo. To a modern viewer, high rice prices sound like good news for samurai who were paid in rice. In reality, it caused total market chaos. When rice prices spiked, the urban economy ground to a halt. The fudasashi, the powerful rice brokers who converted samurai rice stipends into cash gold, slammed the brakes on credit. They refused to advance cash loans to samurai families until the market stabilized. Suddenly, samurai patrons had zero liquidity. At the same time, urban merchants found their cash flow squeezed as basic food costs soared across the city. Now trace that pressure straight into the Yoshiwara. Months pass. The teahouse owner continues to front cash for food, sake, and courtesan fees, watching his gakecho credit ledger swell to terrifying proportions. He reassures his suppliers that everything will be settled on New Year's Eve. Then comes the 31st day of the 12th month, Omisoka. On New Year's Eve, the teahouse clerks fan out across Edo to collect on their tab accounts. They knock on samurai estate gates, they visit merchant counting houses, and the doors stay closed. Patrons make excuses. They offer partial payments. Some simply vanish into the night. The teahouse owner is left holding thousands of ryo in uncollectible paper debt. Now turn the camera around. Standing at the front door of the teahouse are the caterers, the sake wholesalers, the candle merchants, and the representatives of the powerful brothel houses. They want their cash, and unlike the teahouse owner dealing with samurai, suppliers had no cultural compunction about taking a fellow merchant to court. If a teahouse owner could not settle his own accounts on New Year's Eve, his inventory was seized, his license was suspended. One major patron defaulting on a massive debt could trigger a wave of bankruptcies that wiped out a teahouse, its suppliers, and its service staff in a matter of weeks. To see this system playing out in real time, look at what happened during the late 18th century, a period known as the Ane and Tenmei eras. Under the rule of the shogunate senior counselor Tanuma Okitsugu, Edo experienced a golden age of commercial expansion and decadent luxury. It was the absolute peak of the Yoshiwara tea houses. Patrons threw money around with wild abandon. Tea houses expanded, adding second stories, expensive garden courtyards, and imported Chinese ceramics. Tabs ballooned to historic highs. The Yoshiwara cycle from this era shows tea houses competing fiercely for prestige, booking elite courtesans months in advance. Then came 1782. Mount Asama erupted, dropping volcanic ash across central Japan and triggering the Great Tenmei Famine. Crop yields collapsed. Hundreds of thousands starved in the countryside. Rice riots broke out in the streets of Edo. The commercial economy shattered. By 1787, Tanuma Okitsugu was ousted from power in disgrace. In his place came Matsudaira Sadanobu, a stern conservative who launched the Kansei reforms, a massive government crackdown on urban decadence. Sadanobu did not just enforce moral austerity, he targeted the financial system. To relieve the bankrupt samurai class, the shogunate issued the Aisatsugaki, official debt cancellation decrees. With a single stroke of an imperial pen, the shogunate legally wiped out vast portions of the debts that samurai owed to urban merchants. Tea house ledger books became worthless overnight. Dozens of exclusive ageya went under immediately. Their owners were forced to sell their family heirlooms, forfeit their municipal licenses and walk away broke. The credit engine had seized up and the tea house owners burned with it. So who actually got rich from this system? If owning an elite tea house was a financial death trap, who walked away with the real wealth? The answer brings us to one of the most brilliant entrepreneurs in Japanese history, Tsutaya Juzaburo. Born in 1750, Tsutaya grew up in the Yoshiwara. His family ran a modest tea house. Young Tsutaya watched tea house owners take on crushing debt, fight with suppliers, and sweat every New Year's Eve over uncollected tabs. He realized something that escaped everyone else in the district. The tea house owner's most valuable asset was not the sake he poured or the rooms he rented. It was information. Inside the tea house, every secret of Edo high society was laid bare. You knew who was rich, who was broke, who had good taste, and which courtesans were the most sought-after celebrities in the city. Tsutaya decided he didn't want to sell tea on credit. He wanted to sell information for cash. In the 1770s, Tsutaya bought up the exclusive publishing rights to the official district directory, the Yoshiwara Cycle. Instead of printing a boring list of names, Tsutaya turned the guidebooks into a trendy, highly stylized pop culture magazine. He hired young, unknown artists to illustrate the books with woodblock prints of famous courtesans and kabuki actors. He sold these guidebooks at the district gates for cold, hard cash up front. No credit tabs, no waiting for New Year's Eve. Tsutaya used the profits from these guidebooks to launch a massive publishing empire. He discovered and funded the legendary woodblock print artists of Japan, masters like Kitagawa Utamaro and the mysterious portrait artist Toshusai Sharaku. He published radical satirical novels, celebrity gossip guides, and luxury art prints known as ukiyo-e, prints of the floating world. When the Kansei reforms hit in 1789 and tea houses were going bankrupt across the Yoshiwara, Tsutaya was sitting on a mountain of cash and diversified assets. He didn't rely on samurai paying off their party tabs. He had converted tea house cultural intelligence into a scalable, cash-based media empire that made him one of the most influential cultural figures in Japanese history. He used the tea house as a stepping stone, while others treated it as a destination. Before we construct our itemized financial model for an Edo tea house, an explicit disclaimer is required. No complete, unbroken financial ledger covering every single day of operations survives for a single individual ageya across this entire period. The figures that follow represent an evidence-based historical reconstruction. They combine documented booking rates from the Yoshiwara cycle, recorded wholesale food and sake prices from Edo merchant archives, official municipal license fees, and surviving debt contracts, kari teshoga, adjusted for operating assumptions. All monetary values are calculated in gold ryo, with net figures converted into skilled worker wage days based on the documented daily earnings of a master Edo carpenter, roughly 0.08 to 0.1 ryo per day. So how did tea house owners legally bankrupt rich samurai without ever drawing a sword? They didn't have to. The system was designed so that the patrons bankrupted themselves. The tea house was a mirror that reflected the deep structural rot of feudal Japan. It provided a stage where cash-poor aristocrats and cash-rich commoners could play out a dangerous game of social prestige, fueled by unlimited credit and cultural vanity. The tea house owner sat in the center of that web. If he was foolish, he believed he was selling food, wine, and elegance. He let his ledgers fill up with uncollectible promises, waited nervously for New Year's Eve, and went down with his patrons when the economy turned. If he was brilliant, like Tsutaya Juzaburo, he saw the business for what it truly was. He realized that in a world built on illusion and debt, the man who collects the tabs takes all the risk. The man who sells the story takes all the gold. You thought you were opening a luxury salon. What you were really opening was a high-stakes merchant bank with tatami mats. Because the tea was never the business, the credit trap was.